Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in. Let me know if we got an echo or anything going. Interesting. We've got some people saying there's no sound with the intro, and others are saying they like the guitar. So I have no idea what's going on there. Sound is good. So anyhow, probably on your end. So tonight we're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff. Not a lot, 3 or 4 different things. While we're waiting for people to show up, first thing I want to say is thanks to everybody who signed up for Castalia Deluxe, who signed up for the email, the potential email campaign. Nothing's changed as of yet, but we do have a number of important allies who are stepping up, stepping forward, and I'm still optimistic about the likelihood that we're going to be able to convince these folks to do what they should and roll. So anyhow, I'll keep you posted. Be a little bit patient. The soonest, the absolute soonest that we would begin any emails or that sort of thing would be next Monday. So it's important to take a very measured approach, one step at a time. We don't want to create issues where there are none. Deb wants to know if it's possible to opt out of a specific book. Not initially, because that would sort of defeat the purpose of reaching sufficient numbers that let us rely upon what we're going to do. So, if you think that you're going to not want to get a deluxe edition because you happen to have a hardcover or something, then you probably shouldn't sign up for the subscription. You should just buy the extra books that we'll produce. Now, that being said, I'm not going to go into any tactical details here or anything, but everything except for us continuing with the deluxe program is up in the air. What I mean by that is it's possible that we would consider beginning with a different book if that were to be necessary. So we're pursuing many different angles. I've talked to companies in Asia, in Czechoslovakia, in the United Kingdom, and so we are going to make this happen one way or another. And one of the reasons why we know that we can make this happen one way or another is because so many of you have already indicated that you're going to sign up for the subscriptions. Yeah, you can still sign up for the Deluxe Book Club. Just email me with Castalia Deluxe in the subject. We'll put you on the list. We have not yet opened up the actual subscriptions. You cannot actually pay for them yet, because I don't want to do that until we know what specific method we're going to pursue. So, but I really appreciate the strength of the support. And like I said, we've actually got some great new partners that have come forward as a result of this. So I think that once we get the situation resolved and we are moving forward on it, that we're actually going to be in a much, much better place than we would have if everything had gone perfectly smoothly. And that's one of the things that's important to remember about conflict and problems and so forth. It makes you stronger. When you come out of it, especially when you come out of it successfully, it makes you considerably stronger. We are much the better for the result of our past conflicts. We have so much more capability, so much better contacts. It's all good. That doesn't mean that it's not occasionally disappointing, painful, irritating, exhausting, all of those things. You remember, it was 11 months to get through the whole situation with Indiegogo. That was occasionally draining, even occasionally dispiriting at times, but we are sustained by our confidence. We're sustained by the support that we have from you guys, both material and emotional and spiritual. And, I think it's a little bit ironic that, literally 2 days after we were frankly kind of spoiling for a fight, that suddenly we have a little bit of conflict drop right in our laps. So, maybe that's a lesson about don't look for trouble when you don't need to. So, anyhow, the NBA really needs to learn from this kind of thing. What they're doing is just reprehensibly stupid. And it's also a lesson for all of us. Look at all those idiot governors, state governors, city mayors, who went and cucked to the NBA or cucked to the NFL. Oh, no, we need to change our laws on bathrooms because the NBA won't play a game there. How ridiculous, how completely unicized, if that's a word, how hopelessly cucked do these people look versus the way that the Chinese responded to the NFL. All they had to do was simply keep their mouths shut about stuff that they didn't know anything about and weren't involved with in any way, shape, or form. But, they're SJWs. They can't help but it's a cluster cuck. Exactly. One idiot goes ahead and makes a virtue signaling statement, and then China just responds immediately, inflexibly, and makes it very clear that they will not stand for that nonsense. And why should they? And for the NBA to try to claim that it stands for free speech, welcome Shotgun Bear, it is so utterly absurd. Literally the next day, they kicked out 2 Sixers fans who were holding signs that said Free Hong Kong and Free HK. And first they confiscated the signs. Then when he shouted something, they went and kicked him out of the game. How can they possibly claim to be defenders of free speech when they do that? How can they possibly claim to be defenders of free speech when they took Donald Sterling's team away from him because they claimed he had made some racist comments? They fined a player for simply saying no homo. They are absolute liars. They're absolute frauds. And for them to attempt to hide behind free speech should demonstrate to you what a fundamental lie free speech has always been. All free speech has ever been is people who want to say, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, go to unauthorized.tv and look for my video on free speech. You can see why free speech has always been a fraud. And we're seeing it live. We're seeing it live and playing out with regards to the NBA. Now, just to be clear, full disclosure, I do occasionally, very occasionally, because I seldom accept the invitations, but I do occasionally get asked to appear on Chinese state television, their English language channel. I have not accepted any money for it. I mean, they technically are supposed to pay me, but I never bother sending in the forms and so forth. But I speak my mind there just like I do everywhere else. Back when I was on there some time ago, nearly a year ago, I told them that Trump was going to engage in a trade war and he was going to win it because it was this situation was such that the U.S. was guaranteed to benefit from a trade war with China. Of course, some of the expert economists tried to claim I was wrong. Well, look what happened. Jeff Goodley said, any reason you don't take any money for it? To be honest, the main reason is that it's just a hassle. But the second reason is that it's not worth it. If I were to take money for it, then people would start claiming, start trying to use that to discredit me. So it's easier for me to just not do it. But I like the host. I like the fact that they allow different perspectives and different points of view. Believe it or not, the Chinese media is more open in many ways than the United States media. There's no question about that. How many times have you seen, Cripple Bear says, do you think that I would ever be allowed on Fox, CBS, CNN? Of course not. My perspectives, my opinions, despite the fact that they repeatedly prove out over time, my perspectives and opinions are not permitted on mainstream US TV. They are observably permitted on Chinese state TV. This is a fact. And so, the world is not the black and white binary construction that most people want you to believe that it is. It's more complicated than that. There's more factors involved, more parties involved. And so, just don't leap to accept the mainstream narrative because it's usually false. Sometimes it's all the information you have, but if you want to learn more about the Chinese situation, you should probably take a look at two posts on the blog. There's two different mailboxes. One is from a mainlander who has one perception, and the other is from a Hong Kong native who has a different perspective but isn't completely in disagreement with the mainlander. So it's very interesting to see how this is playing out. But I can tell you that there is no way the NBA is going to be able to finesse the situation. I fully expect that they're going to cancel the game simply because it will humiliate the NBA commissioner. I think they waited to do it until he arrived in China because they want to make it very, very clear to him that all the posturing and all the bullying in which the NBA is accustomed to behaving is not going to work with them. I don't think it will. Did the econ guys fail to see or refuse to admit that the U.S. had nothing to lose in a trade war at this point? They failed to see it in the case of the interview on CGNT or whatever the channel is. I liked it a lot better when they just called it CCTV. I could remember that. So, now you look at what's happening and going on. Yeah, Dave said they've already said it won't be televised. That's correct, but it will be much more serious if they actually cancel the game altogether and refuse to allow it to be played. I suspect that's what they're planning to do, unless the NBA commissioner does the full kowtow routine, apologizes, announces that Daryl Morey will be fired, etc., etc. At this point, that's probably what it would take. And I don't know whether the NBA has the humility to go ahead and do that. So anyhow, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And frankly, I don't care. I don't care at all about the NBA. I dislike nearly everything about it. And if you look at Blizzard, there's something similar going on there. I respect Mark Kern. Mark Kern actually, Blizzard clearly cucked. And now I do think that Blizzard probably, I respect Mark Kern's decision. I respect his position. But I don't think that Blizzard is in the business of attempting to play politics. And this is the danger. This is, this is part of the problem that we're dealing with. Christopher McCullough, this is timely. Is this latest wave of anti-China news due to the elites realizing that China won't be their refuge? I believe that is a significant element of it, yes. What he's referring to is that for the past, I think it was 2006, so for at least the past 13 years, and probably more like the last 20 years, the elite Jewish organizations have been planning to leave the United States and move to China because even though they don't like to admit to the historical pattern, they understand it perfectly well. The United States has been financially stripped. It's not just by those organizations. This is not conspiracy theory. This is stuff that is literally in mainstream newspapers. You just have to sort of, be able to put the pieces together. And so, anyhow, it's become very, very clear that that is not going to happen. It's not going to be permitted. And that's part of what we're seeing here with China and the NBA. The NBA is essentially a Jewish organization. People think of it as being a black league, but that's not true. The ownership, the people who run it, et cetera, have long been predominantly Jewish, because they could afford that before they were able to afford the NFL teams like they can now. So, anyhow, obviously, the time to move on to greener pastures is approaching at some point in time. When, we don't know. 2050, 2030. But the Chinese have a long memory, and they know, they're still upset about the opium wars. Virtually no one in the United States even knows what the opium wars are. And so, well, if we can't move in, then we're going to make you the new Hitler. But China doesn't care. Why? Because they're the Middle Kingdom. And so, it's really interesting to see. I mean, I've predicted this a long time ago, that once a small, relatively intelligent, low trust group encountered a very large, relatively high intelligence, low trust group, the larger group was going to come out on top. And, that's what we're seeing. The problem in the West, there was, the fundamental problem in the West was always that Europeans are stupidly high trust. That's why they are so easily taken advantage of by everyone. All you got to do to manipulate Europeans is to tell them that they're not being nice, and they'll usually fall all over themselves to claim that they're not, or claim that they are. So, would you consider printing Strong's Concordance? Possibly. So, anyhow, so it'll with what's going on with the NBA is going to eventually bend the knee. That's very clear. And so, we'll just have to see how it plays out. And there's too much money involved for them not to give in. So, but see, the South Park guys don't care. That's the difference. You've got principled people like Mark Kern, who, is willing to sacrifice the financial benefits that would come his way. But most, very few Blizzard employees quit. The Blizzard employees are going to bend the knee. But here's the interesting thing. How come Christians who were just as powerful in the West were unable to do the same? It was only because we were unwilling to. We were too cowardly. We were too concerned that somebody somewhere might call us names. So learn from the Chinese. Don't worry about people calling you names. Don't go seeking the approval of your enemies and people who are attempting to take advantage of you. Gabriel Rhodes said Christians were ignorant. Yeah, to a certain extent, I think that was part of the problem. I think the high trust was part of the problem. China does not approve or appreciate what Japan did to them in World War II. And yeah, and this is, remember, this is what we should be doing ourselves. We should not be playing along and buying into all this free speech fakery. It's not real. It's false. When people take the name of the Lord in vain, we should call them out on it, and we should not permit it. When people try to force us to mouth their lies, we should refuse to do so. Bruce Jenner can change his name to Caitlyn if he wants. That's legal. You can change your name to whatever you want. But it doesn't make him a woman. Sticking plastic in his chest doesn't make him a woman. Even surgically removing his body parts, if he went that far, would not make him a woman. Nothing would. Nothing can. No, I have no. Somebody said something about would we be interested in taking investment and doing this sort of thing? No, we're not going to take investment, because that's how you end up getting disrupted. That's how you end up getting infiltrated and taken over. I mean, it kind of comes down to the same thing when people said, well, why didn't you take money to appear on Chinese television? Because I don't wish to be owned by anyone. My soul is my own. My voice is my own. Maybe what I'm saying is correct. Maybe I've gotten things wrong. But at least you know that I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking, the SJW narrative. I'm not speaking, the opinion that's been put in my ear by some producer who's paying me to talk. I have no advertisers, none whatsoever. And, even you guys who support me in the manifold ways that you support me and support the organizations with which I work, I don't answer directly to you. If you get upset with me and you don't like the fact that I, support the Vikings or have an opinion on free trade and that sort of stuff, then you can pull it at any time. But I'm not going to change my opinion on that basis. Welcome, Foregone. Tyler says, what about a really large money gift? No strings attached. I don't conceptually have a problem with that, as long as it's very, very clear that, I will do as I see fit with it. And generally, what I see fit with it is something that is going to benefit the larger community. Generally, not always. I think it's pretty clear that I'm not spending a lot of money on my wardrobe or even anything in my office. If you look at this, it's kind of sad. You can't tell really anything about my life from watching a video from like a year ago to now, other than when I lost a little bit of weight. I'm still wearing exactly the same, like 7 shirts Um, and the but I mean, there's a lot of different, like somebody said, well, what would you do if yeah, actually, and that is the one area that I will admit freely that I have uh, spent an almost embarrassing amount of money on uh, was keeping Space Bunny's dog alive. Um, and I don't apologize for that. And I know that I don't have to apologize for that because I know very well that you guys have been uh, cheering for him from the start. Um, you know, we have no idea how long he has, but you know, this has been a wonderful summer, a great summer. I mean, uh, every day, every day I am out with him on a walk, and that happy, goofy face as he's running around, it's fantastic, you know. Um, but anyhow, the but the point is that we are um, focusing on how we do things. Like one thing that even occurred to me is one possibility is that maybe we figure out a way to do some of this stuff ourselves. You know, it's I can't believe you did. How do you not know I'm a Vikings fan? I like literally wear Viking shirts about once every 2 weeks. You know, um, actually, I think that I mean, oh, I had purple I had purple corduroy pants. I went to school on my first day of school in purple corduroy pants with a yellow Viking shirt with purple accents on the elbows. And my best friend did the same thing when he went to school for the first time the following year. I think I even wore it again that year. So, anyhow, um, but we really do need to learn from the example of the Chinese. You know, I thought this was an interesting way to describe it. Um, let's see here. I want to find this. Okay, so it says, um, okay, so here's an example of what not to do. Here's the usual SJW lying. In a statement, or on Monday, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver waded into the fray. He reportedly spoke to Kyodo News, a local news outlet in Japan, and expressed his support for uh, Daryl Morey in terms of his ability to exercise his freedom of expression. Now, who among you believes that Morey would be supported if he said, the problem is that we have too much, or we have a disproportional Jewish ownership or disproportional black players, a percentage of black players? Would he have supported Morey's freedom of expression there? Of course not. He would have fined him. He might have even fired him. In a statement the next day, Silver said the NBA could not regulate what players, employees, and team owners say, except they do. They already do. We all know they do. So there's absolutely no possible way to defend his position. It's a lie. It's a blatant lie. I liked what one of the Chinese companies said, Vivo. Vivo has always insisted on the principle that the national interest is above all else and firmly opposes any remark and behavior that constitutes a challenge to the national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Can you imagine if American corporations were that loyal, wouldn't that be amazing? You know, this is what being totally inflexible can do for you. This is what standing by your principles can do for you. The NBA has to lie because they don't have any principles. You know, it's just constant inversion, subversion, playing around, manipulating. So, all right, let's do some super chats. Creative Bear says the Ohio show was well worth the 7-hour drive from Canada support. Wow, well done. Shout out to Jeff Cameron and company. That's from Creative Bear. Thanks for supporting the Big Bear, Creative Bear. M. Bolster does his thing. Thank you. DA says, Vox, what's the new fight? I've been out of it. Well, it's not a fight. We just have a situation where a book bindery suddenly reversed course and claimed that they were unable to bind books for us. So we're working on convincing them otherwise. Thomas W. said, audience, how do I calculate the enthalpy of a neutralization reaction? I'm stuck. Love the stream, Vox. Keep crushing. Well, if anyone wants to help him with his enthalpic calculation, let Thomas know. DA says, re the NBA thing among others. It seems the multinational corporations seem schizophrenic in regards to China, going between kowtowing and subverting. Corporations have sold out the USA, but seem unsure of the next move. Well, right, because they've already strip mined the US. You know, and they've cut their own throats in the US. You know, here's the most amazing thing about that bindery situation. I was talking to another bindery, and there used to be, in Canada, there used to be 20 that were registered and approved to do library quality bindings. I think probably for the government or something. Now there's 2. There's 1 in the United States. So these companies are like desperately casting around for ways to remain relevant in the age of the ebook and stuff. And here they have a potentially decent sized customer who could become a very large and important customer. I mean, we could literally become this company's second most important customer. But because there's some SJW having a hissy fit, they are, you know, flirting with the idea of cutting their own throats. It's crazy. But that's exactly what all the big companies have done. What has Google done? YouTube is losing money. They're losing money every single year, and they went and demonetized Owen, who was bringing in a lot of money for both himself and for YouTube. So, you know, their situation is I mean, they're in a completely untenable position, which is where lying takes you. Once you start lying, especially to yourself, you're going to end up in a bad position sooner or later. And that's where these converged companies have arrived. Arkanos says, Blizzard Entertainment was in a similar situation and made the right call. A pro player tweeted in support of the Hong Kong protests and was banned by Blizzard. Well, I think it was more than that. It wasn't just that he tweeted something. I think that he actually did it while he was on a Blizzard-sponsored show. And I believe they also fired the 2 hosts of the show, which I think was a little bit extreme considering that I don't think those guys were involved, and they tried to stop it as quickly as possible. But I don't really know about it. So I can't speak on that. Mustard Bear asks, does Castalia have an interest in business growth by acquisition M&A? If so, would an acquisition play for a value-add business, say a leather binding book company, be of interest? Well, I think you overestimate how big we are and the amount of resources we have. We don't have anywhere nearly enough money to buy a company like that. Not yet. Obviously, if Rebels Run turns out to be a big hit or something, that might change. But in the meantime, we have to convince people to work with us. We can't just buy them out. Frank Underwood said, isn't free speech a tool for revolutionaries to erode the established values? Yes, precisely. That's all free speech has ever been. Free speech is therefore a tool for our side. No. Well, it can be. It certainly can be. But you need to keep in mind that it's a tactic. And it's not true, it's not real, and it is not part of Western civilization. It's just another one of those Enlightenment inversions. How much of a legend was King Edward I? He was definitely a legend, although not as much as Alfred the Great. Gene Dirtall said, just saw on YouTube expat in China talking about how there's a widespread meme about the superiority of the specials in China introduced in the late 80s, 90s. I have no idea what you're talking about. Are you talking about like genetically modified people? I'm sorry, I don't understand. Ben Hill says, God bless, thank you. Will you bring on a Vizsla fur baby sometime? We don't have fur babies, we have dogs. My wife particularly loathes that thing. Dogs are very important, but dogs are not children. It's a different situation. Although we do refer to Mazie, the dog that the channel sponsors have essentially kept alive. We refer to him as the teacup Ridgeback. Not because he's small. You've seen him. He's not small. But he thinks he's small. He's absolutely convinced that there is always space for him on the couch. I mean, at one point the other day, my wife and one of the kids was on the couch with the dog. There was no room at all. But Mazie was convinced, and somehow he made it work. So it's a rare talent. Samson Bear says, when Alex Jones says Chi-Com, should we take it as code for Bolshevik globalist? If you do that, it all fits. I don't know. I mean, I don't. I think that a lot of people say communist or the left when they're really talking about the neoliberals and neocons who are globalists, but I don't know. Hey Vox, people keep bringing up astrology to me. Why? It's stupid. Do you think there's anything legit about it? No. And is there any biblical Christian application for it? No. It's total nonsense. So I would not take it the least bit seriously in any way, shape, or form. Oh, Gene says specials equals you-know-who's can't say their names. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, yeah, no, that was part of what I was talking about. There's a whole slew of different organizations. I actually read the 50-page document that was the plan for convincing the Chinese that it would be to their advantage to follow the lead of the Jewish people and essentially learn from them. Let Dennis Prager share, 20 years ago. And so I think that Hollywood's influence, the Chinese influence on Hollywood will be for the better. Lion Share Logo says, with Holy Spirit here to help us enunciate the heart of the Father and our King, what can we do to better cooperate to this power? I think be honest and ask God to guide you. Thomas W. got his help with the calculation. Redox Bear help. Thank you, Redox Bear. Nice work, community. Glad you're able to help each other out, even if I have no idea what you're talking about or doing. Michael asks, if a serious economic collapse or tribulation occurred, would you attempt to live streaming instructions for us?